Okay, we can continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So our next panelist is going to be Catherine.
Hi, all. My name's Catherine, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. I was a biosci major, and I also graduated last spring, 2020, the same as Akira. And right now, and then I was involved in mostly like every PhilAm org. Like I tried my best as well to be as active as I could. So like MK, FAC, PhilA, Bridge, and PACE. And then currently right now, I'm a medical assistant at a local family practice clinic in my hometown. And a fun fact is that I want to build my first PC this year.
All right, well, we hope
you.
your PC in the future. Our next panelist is going to be Henry. Has Henry come?
Hey, sorry, I was late. I was taking a lab and it kind of ran late, but my name's Henry. I'm a civil engineering graduate student. I graduated Davis with my undergrad 2 years ago. And I was a bridge intern and I was involved in PACE. Let's see, fun fact. So during, was it one of the, I think it was when they were like doing PCN prep, I was like, I never knew what the thing was. So I tried it out. And then like, those things are kind of heavy or like they hurt. So I got smashed and then I did stage lighting instead, which is super underrated. So yeah.
All right, thank you.
And we'll be moving on to the next panelist, Leanne.
Hi everyone, my name is Leanne. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I also graduated this past spring 2020 as a civil engineering major. And then recently I got a job at the Department of Water Resources as a water resources engineer. So super exciting. It's only my 3rd week, but when I was at Davis, I was involved in PACE and also in Kappa. It was really fun. And then fun fact, I like my cereal with ice in it.
All right, thank you so much, Leanne. And then we have our final panelist, last but not least, Narelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Narelle. I was a biochemical engineering major. I also used the pronoun she, her, hers. I graduated a little farther away ago in fall of 2011. I was pretty involved as well. MK choir director for 2 years, MK vintage for 1 year, involved in PACE for a really long time. And in kind of like that weird half year I had was president for a little while. So fun fact, when I'm not in the lab, I also teach yoga on the side. So scientist turned yoga teacher. That's always fun. Thanks for having me here, guys.
Okay, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. So now we're going to move on to the panel section, which is what everyone came here for. So before we start, we're just going to run down basically like the logistics of how we want the panel to work. So what we're going to do is Vince and I are going to introduce each of our big topics to our panelists, and we're going to let them have like a free-form discussion about their experiences and like, you know, anything they had to let us know. And for everyone in the audience, if you guys have questions, unless they're very urgent and like very relevant, we'd like to ask you to hold on to them. There will be time for questions at the end because we want to try to make sure we don't go over time. We're going to try to go around 20 minutes for each section. So yeah, we're excited to hear our panelists' thoughts and experiences. So without further ado, we'll move to the first topic, which is obviously their experience at UC Davis. So any panelists can join in just to read off the questions, just to, you know, get ideas going. We were wondering, for example, like what it was like for you to go to Davis, what classes and professors like really left an impact on you, and what resources or opportunities did you take advantage while you were here? So anyone who'd like to speak, go on ahead.
Okay, I'll be super brave and go first. My college experience was super, super fun. I think it was my first time living away from home. So that's always really fun. A lot of professors that impacted me were professors that taught really practical classes. So I actually took this class, I can't remember which one it was, but it was something called bioprocessing. And essentially what I learned was like about equipment, about pumps, about tanks, about tubing, super practical stuff that was really useful to me. And the professor that taught it was actually a professor for engineering, chemical engineering, but I believe at the time he was the vice president or something or other of like the wine people, viticulture, I guess it was. So he took us on a tour of the whole entire winery and he showed us what these pumps look like, what these tanks look like, what this tubing look like. So it was just so practical, so tangible. And he himself came from industry. He had worked at Roche, which currently owns Genentech right now. So a couple of resources that were super helpful for me. I don't know if these still exist, but I will say them anyways. One was the meat lab. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of the meat lab, but the meat lab is actually in the animal sciences building close to like where Tercero is. And what they do is they sell meat for super hella cheap. So I lived off of that. I don't know why you would want 50 eggs for $3, but hey, I'll take it. Marinated meats, lived off of that stuff. And the second resource that I had, which I still also don't know if that still exists or if it's even there, is I believe it's the vet lab, the vet library that's close to the stadium. As an engineer, I studied all the time, and nobody went to the vet library, but not only that, you could rent out rooms. So what I did was I went there in the morning, I'd study until 12, I'd lock up the room, go get lunch, come back, study until it closed. So I don't know if that still exists, but if it's there, y'all take advantage of it. There's also rooms for like 2 people and also rooms for like 10 people. Just saying.
I can go next since I'm still having my UC Davis experience, I guess. Undergrad was cool. Undergrad was fun. I think I'm a little biased because like Bridge is in the SRCC. They had really nice like study nights and stuff like that. And back then, I don't know if you still can do it, but they had like free Scantrons. I don't know. I haven't had a test like that required Scantrons in like ages, so I don't know if those are extinct now. But they gave out free Scantrons, which was always nice to have. And then I think for more engineering related resources, I know that like there's the Leader Center in Kemper, and I know that the TBP, the Engineering Honor Society, does tutoring, which was I always felt was the most personal because it was like people that just took the class and they can be a lot more casual, be a lot more relatable about the class with you. So I took advantage of that tutoring a lot. And then, yeah, I think just to echo off what Neryl said, like my favorite professors were the ones that were super practical, that had like a lot of like industry experience. Not that many in my department, honestly, but the few that did, like it was really nice to like talk to them and like get career advice outside of the classroom from them. So, yeah.
And Scantrons was like, I had a Scantron for every other class, I felt like. So that's kind of crazy that those don't really exist anymore.
I guess I can go next. So in terms of professors and classes that impacted me, I think this might be a little specialized because specific to electrical engineering, but if anybody is an electrical engineering major, I would highly, highly, highly recommend applying to eMERGE, which is a optional class you could take as a 3rd year. And it gives you project experience. It gives you like hands-on experience as opposed to just learning theory all the time. You actually get to build whatever you want to build. And so what I was able to do is like, I think the reason why I was able to find a job in this job climate was because of that class. And also by taking that class, you get keys to a lab. And so it's really helpful. So that's what I would recommend. the typical advice that I would give is, going to office hours a lot, and specifically with professors that you find interesting in terms of, the field that they are specializing in. And if that's something that interests you, I would highly recommend that, because they have a lot of connections, and connections are everything. So yeah, definitely like get to know your professors for sure. Opportunities and resources that were helpful to me. Bouncing off of what Henry said, yeah, the SRC is a great place to study. It's a great place just to hang around. A lot of my friends were always there, so that was cool. Yeah, and also the Kemper. I would say, yeah, Kemper is where I also spent a lot of my time. The leader place. But yeah, that's my place.
I can go next. So just a general piece of college advice. I don't know if this is reassuring or not, but my college experience was a struggle. I literally didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I had a career crisis every quarter. I started off as electrical engineering and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up switching to civil engineering like my third year. And then once I switched, I realized that I really liked the classes that I was taking and I was starting to enjoy school. But up to that point, I felt like pretty lost, not really knowing about where my college journey would end. And even until graduation just this past spring, I didn't know what the next steps were to take. But I eventually found a job that I really enjoy. And so I guess just a piece of reassuring advice is you don't have to have it all figured out. I felt I kind of stumbled my way through college and found my way eventually just by talking to other people, talking to people in the field, talking to past alumni. So you don't have to know everything right now.
I guess like my experiences, we're gonna take a little like detour since I'm actually in the health sciences, but I can talk about like a little bit of my the experiences I had taking that route. So I feel like after undergrad, just in general, but like it feels like, sorry. It feels like really good, like looking back on it, like I miss it a lot, but it's probably just because like that one like post grad feel like limbo that you have, like school is like the only thing like you could think about, and then now that like you're thrown into the real world, you're like, oh, I miss school. But I think I genuinely did have like a great time at Davis. The standout classes for me in the health sciences is I was able to take anatomy right before lockdown happened. So I was like, it was just a really cool practical class to like show like different things in the medical field. And like we got to look at cadavers and just like do a lot of those like hands-on processes and like case studies as well, like during class. Like our professor, Dr. Gross, would like call people up to demonstrate right in front of the class, like different health cases. Like he would be like, oh, you can lie down and like I'll pretend to give you the Heimlich maneuver. And it was like really fun. But the actual professors that impacted me the most, I wasn't able to connect to the professors I had actual classes for, but I was able to, in my last year, have a research lab position under an immunology lab. So I was in MedSci a lot. So like Narelle said, like that's a really like nice like niche spot to be in, to study in, to like spend your time in.
And no one's there.
No one is there. Literally no one's there. But it's like you can honestly like take the bus there. I feel like you're too lazy to walk or bike. So I think like the D line or something goes there when like COVID's over and y'all can go back on campus. Sorry. And then but I had a really good time over there because I was towards the end of my undergrad, I was flip-flopping between medicine and research. So I decided to go ahead, and I'm really interested in immunology. So I went ahead and found a professor I was really interested in the research in, and he was able to give me a lot of life advice. So even if like you can't get close to your professors in classes that are like have 500 different students, there's other ways to like make your connections. He gave me a lot of life advice because he also did like a PhD and a research thing between medicine and research. So, and I still talk to him even like now, like 1 year past graduating. So like those connections can last if you make them. I also did an HRI, so like the health related internships. And then I made a lot of use of HPA, which is health professions advising. So like if you're like going down that path, those are like really great things to look into because that's a guaranteed internship. And then that's also like, there's lots of great advice that the advisors give.
All right, thank you guys. Does anyone have any last minute comments or anything before we move on? Okay, I will, thank you. It was very nice to hear about your guys' UC Davis experiences. So I will let Vince take it away to the next slide.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for your for sharing your experiences with UC Davis. Sorry. And now we'd like to ask for more PhilAm specific experiences. So how did being a part of the PhilAm community affect your college life, or maybe your careers, or just any little tidbits of positive, I guess, effect it had on you, and what resources were most useful to you?
I guess I can start. My PhilAm experience had its ups and downs, let's just say. And but I think the connections that I made through the PhilAm were the things that helped me out the most, quite honestly. So for my first job, I actually got advice from an alumni about 3 years older than me that was already working there. And he's like, oh, do this, say this, do that. Oh, you're interviewing with that guy, say these things. He likes these things. Other types of connections. My roommates were all in the PhilAm as well. We stayed really close. And even though we're completely different majors, we've all been able to kind of help each other get jobs. Being part of PASE, honestly, talking with alumni, getting connections with them, helped me get jobs, quite honestly. And at my first job, I kid you not, I think there were at least 3 or 4 PASE alumni, 1 or 2 of them being PASE presidents, like older than me. Can you imagine? Also, in terms of connections, I don't know if any of you are taking anatomy, but one of my former roommates was a PhilA president, but she's also a TA for the anatomy class. So her name is Kay Cabernet, and she's great. She's really great at anatomy. And so I lived with like 2 other, I was a PASE president. I lived with 2 other PhilA presidents, not at the same time. But we all just pooled all our resources together, everything that we knew, all the tips and the tricks and the files that we had, and we just used them all amongst ourselves, and it was awesome. So connections, for sure. That was the biggest thing I benefited from.
So we're going in the same sequence. Yeah, PhilAm was cool. I'm actually Chinese Indonesian. I don't really identify as Filipino. I grew up in the Bay. I had a lot of friends that went to James Logan. So I had a lot of like friends that were part of that community. And when I came in as a freshman, I was just like trying to figure out what college was about. So Icebreakers was really fun, and that's kind of how I started. But overall, kind of like the hustle and bustle can kind of be a bit much. So I didn't really, I wasn't as involved as maybe some of my peers here. But it did allow me to feel comfortable, like injecting myself in a community and trying out new things. So eventually, I did find like other clubs and stuff like that, and like being able to be more adventurous and try new things, I think is really great. And I think PhilAm really helped me get that started. So yeah.
So how did the PhilAm affect my college life? As an engineering major, I feel like, you know, the typical stereotypical engineers, they're always studying, they're always just trying to get through their classes. But college is such a short period of time. And for me, what the PhilAm allowed me to do was have a social life. It's where I met a lot of my friends. It's where I went. And yeah, it's for me, I was mainly in it for the social aspect of it, but I also think that there's, oh, I muted myself, sorry. I also think there's a lot of professional aspects that are beneficial too. Specifically, I was a, how do I say this? I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I think it's really great to be able to go to icebreakers, like Henry said, or other events where you're meeting a lot of people and you're just expanding your network always. So I think that was why PhilAm was important to me.
I think a lot of what I have to say kind of overlaps. PhilAm was a big part of my college life. It was basically my home away from home because prior to coming to college, I was like in Japan for like 9 years, and then my family, they were like overseas away from home, and so I came to California, and I literally knew nobody, and so the connections I made from PACE and from Kappa, they really became my support system, really became the people I would study with, the people I would turn to when I'm really struggling with school or with personal things. And so I think it's really important that PhilAm really had that role in my life during my college career.
Yeah, just piggybacking off of like what everyone has been talking about, like both like the social aspect and the professional aspect of the PhilAm, like it really sticks with you. So it's like one of those times where like Akira was saying, the support system that you gain from having that social aspect of the PhilAm, like having that like work, study, and then fun like social balance was like really like mentally stabilizing in that way. I don't know how I could have actually like gone through all of undergrad like without having the friends that I made, or like having those like events to like look forward to at the end of the week. So, and it's like not only that, like it's the connections that you have, like they last way longer than just like when you're in undergrad. Like everyone was saying, like they can help you find jobs, or they can pool resources with you, or they could connect you to other people. And I also believe that like the leadership that y'all are doing, especially like everyone on PACE right now, like it does matter. Like the work that you're putting into like these organizations, the stuff that you're going to be adding to your resume letter, like later, it's gonna relate to like the next question, but you could always like this experience like that you're going through, like you could always like sell yourself through that. So I just want to say like the PhilAm is like, even if it's like a little removed from whatever profession you're going to, you could always make it relate. So.
Oh, I have another comment. So I think that also in terms of the professional aspect of PhilAm, I attended several workshops, like the resume workshop or an elevator pitch workshop. I think there was also like a LinkedIn workshop or something along those lines. Those for me really helped, and I didn't see the value in them like right after, because I was like, oh, this isn't applicable to me yet. I went to them like freshman, sophomore year, but it wasn't until junior, senior year that I really started to need those skills. And I was able to, recall those workshops. I'm like, oh, that actually came in handy. Specifically, I'm talking about the job fair, the career fair, where there's so many like stations and you just have to give your spiel for 30 seconds. And for me, the elevator workshop was really helpful, elevator pitch, because it allowed me to just say like, hi, and just within a quick time span, I was able to tell them who I was, why I think I'm good for the position, and like, yeah. So I think that going to workshops for sure is helpful.
And just to add to that, I not only did I go to Davis, but I have gone for my company 2 UC Davis career fairs, and I have been on the receiving end of getting resumes, but it does make me stop when I see the resume and I'm like, oh, PhilAm, okay, you get this pile over here. Not gonna lie. So I've been on both ends of this. It's kind of funny. Also, just to lead to the next question. No, I will not be attending the career fair next week. Good try though. Leading up to the next question, especially if you're on a board, the connections that you make on your board, those people can actually be references for your next job. So be nice.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other last minute comments before we move on? No? Okay, it's glad to hear about your guys' PhilAm experiences. You know, I'm glad to know everyone here. It's really nice. I enjoy the PhilAm a lot, so it's nice to see how it resonates with everyone. So without further ado, we'll go to the third topic, which has already kind of been hinted at, getting a job and internship, which I'm sure a lot of the people attending are curious about. We've already touched upon it, but just general questions to get the panelists thinking. What was applying for jobs and internships like, and how much experience did you need in order to get the positions you're at today, the positions you had in the past, and what tips helped you best? Although I think we have talked about it a little bit, but any other tips and how to get jobs and internships, we'd love to hear.
I want to go last because I feel like I have a lot to say.
Yeah, we can reverse the order.
I like the reverse order thing.
You're in the middle either way, right?
Oh, that's true.
Well, I could go ahead and start it off then. So we are I guess our class started job hunting at a weird time because we graduated right when COVID hit, and then so there was like a little job recession, and it was just very hard at that time to find a job that would want you to be there remotely or physically or like with all the precautions. But I actually took at least like half a year off just to like recenter myself. And that's like something like I kind of, if it's available to you, if like, sorry, this is like, I don't know how like where this is going, but I just want to say like it's fine if you don't know like where you're going to, what you want to be in the future. It's going to be a little philosophical, but you can take the break that you need. Like your time isn't running out. Like a lot of people are in the same situation as you, and like you're not as alone as you think you are. So like it's fine to have like that break where like you're kind of just at home figuring things out. Like not everyone like immediately like finds a job right after college, or and then if they did like, and if they enjoyed it, then that's like all great to them. But I've had like friends who like came up to me and been like, I wish I had a couple months after like undergrad, like just to like have to myself. So like if that's something like you're considering, like this is a sign. Like take as much time as you need, okay? Like opportunities will come when they come. And then so yeah, but for my job, or like at the moment, like entry-level jobs require like how many years of experience, and it's kind of whack that they do. But again, like how I said before, like your PhilAm experiences, anything that you can like do to talk yourself up, they count. Like questions I get in interviews are like, oh, like have you, like they do like the situational, like how have you done with like multitasking or like stressful situations? And like you've experienced all of this in the PhilAm, y'all know it, okay? Like y'all have your blue tape, like you can like definitely like use that, like fast-paced environments where you had to change things last minute, or where you had to a lot of projects handling, or you had like communication, you had to like deal with communication with your different partners or peers. Like you can all get that without having technical experience in the field. So I think that's what worked out for me the best, because I didn't have a lot of health experience for my medical assistant job, but I was able to be like, hey, I did a bunch of things in my organization in the PhilAm where I had had to deal with a bunch of stress, and I had to deal with a bunch of multitasking and dealing with people or like difficult like situations. So you could always just sell yourself that way. Yes.
Oh, it's me. Well, I just recently went through this for the past, half a year. So yeah, definitely job searching in a pandemic is hard. But I think a piece of advice that really helped me is to treat everything as a learning experience. I got a lot of rejections and I just kind of had to let it roll off my back because I can't let it affect how I go into the next interview. And I remember one interview I did. It was the worst interview I've ever done. It was a technical interview for like a city engineer position. And it was like a panel of 3 engineers. And then they basically had their piece of paper. They went down the list of all these technical questions. And for half of the interview, I was saying, I don't know. And yeah, I was really discouraged at the end of it. But I was like, I'm not gonna get this job anyway. And since I said, I don't know, we have 20 minutes to spare. So I basically, for the end of the interview, I asked them a bunch of like career advice. I asked them like what I can improve upon. I asked them like, aside from the knowledge that I can gain on the job, like what kind of qualities are you looking for, like in a person you want to work with? And apparently they told me I did really good actually. And that's the kind of, I guess, like attitude that they're looking for in a person. And I made it to the next round, even though I spent half of the interview saying, I don't know. So I think it's just good to keep that kind of attitude propel you to whatever the next step in your career is.
So I feel like everyone probably, but I also was rejected quite a bit. Like Kat said, I'm still getting rejections in my inbox today, even though I got like a job. So the application process, similar to Kat and Leanne, I've been job hunting since end of June. And for me, I think what really helped every time I was in an interview was just trying to have a conversation with the person. I know that it's kind of stressful because there's this difference in power, right? There's one person who's saying all the questions and you're trying to answer all them. But for me, the interviews that I thought went really well were the interviews where I got to try to know the person, even though it's a little bit hard. They start off like, oh yeah, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And then I would respond like, oh, how are you doing? Like, how's your day been? And like trying to ask them questions back, just to show them that, hey, I'm a person too. Like, we're in this together kind of thing. So I think that for me really helped make a positive impact. And also one piece of advice I got when I was still applying for jobs was someone told me that you should always, whenever interviews end, right, they always ask, oh, okay, like any last questions for me? And one of the questions that I always posed was like, what, in your opinion, like, what was the question? Oh yeah, why would you not hire me? It's kind of blunt, but basically you want to ask them like, what are the qualities that you don't have that they're looking for? What are the qualities that you can improve on, so that even if they reject you in the next one, like you'll know better. In the next one, you'll continuously always improve. So I would say that, I guess just to sum it all up, the interview, they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. Like, you want to make sure that the job you have is a great place for you to be in. So I think that it's important to keep that in mind, and not just like put yourself way below the other person, and just kind of try to have a conversation with them. And the other one was to ask again, like, what you can improve on. Yeah.
So let's see, for my work experience, might be a graduate student, but I actually work for a water company in the Bay Area. So most of my work experience has been as like a government engineer. I've worked in construction for about 10 years now. And I think I kind of came at a place of privilege. Like I got lucky when I was 14 and got my first internship like during high school because they were kind of just looking. Um, and then since then, you kind of just bounce, like I've kind of just bounced around like different agencies, different firms just from word of mouth. And because of that, like I had really strong references. I had really like tight connections. So it kind of, it kind of made me more confident in the interviews because I usually came in knowing a lot of the people. Sometimes they're like old drinking buddies and that kind of stuff. And you can kind of, they can kind of like know you a little bit better in that sense. But I've had a lot of interviews as well when it's like you go in not knowing anything. And I think a big thing to learn early on is like Leanne did, like learn how to say I don't know in a graceful way and try and get the most out of it. So yeah, it's a numbers game. You get accepted and you get rejected, and eventually like you're bound to get something. You are in a really good like institution with Davis. They have like a solid education and stuff like that. It has a good like name recognition. You're bound to get something, and you just keep at it, and eventually something will turn up.
All right, so I have lots of things to say because one, I have been an intern before. Number two, I have hired many interns as well. So I've been on both sides. And like I said, I've been at career fairs. So I've been on that side as well too. Comes with all the years, I suppose. I want to say that, you know, saying I don't know is actually super powerful. Very recently, I had interviewed this one guy and I asked him, I said, oh, how does this one method work? And he essentially BS'd his way through that whole entire thing. Little did he know that I had tons of experience with this method and I knew what he was saying was total BS. And so I said to my boss, I was just like, we're not hiring this guy. Like, he just tried to BS his way through like what he thought this method was. And that's not right because I did that method for the last 3 years. But we interviewed this other guy who he was really confident in what he knew and he was really confident about what he didn't know. So when I asked him a question, he knew the answer, you know, he said it with confidence. But when I asked him a question and he didn't know the answer, you know, he'd very, very frankly look at me and say, I don't know. And I was like, we're hiring this dude because, you know, there's a sort of humility that comes there. Like, it's powerful to know what you know, but it's even more powerful to know what you don't know, right? So I love Leanne's story because, I mean, I had just been on the other side of that, quite honestly. So be confident. I mean, you have a really great college education and use it. And the second thing what I would do is also around resumes. So when you apply for an internship that you want, read the job description and then try to kind of extrapolate what kind of qualities they want, what kind of skills that they want from that job description. So maybe it's a lab manager. So maybe they want you to be organized or something, or organize systems. Even though you don't have maybe lab experience, you might want to play up, oh, well, I organized etiquette dinner, or I organized PCN, and I had to coordinate 100 people and get them to go to PCN practice on time, right? That's a huge undertaking. So what I would do is then I would take your resume and then format it to show how organized you are. For example, if you're applying for a lab manager job. That can be really tough, especially if you're applying to lots and lots of jobs. So what I usually do is I make a huge master resume of like all the skills I ever had. And then for each job, so say it's a lab manager job here, okay, I'm going to edit it out so that it's mostly about organization. Okay, over here, maybe they want some kind of lab intern that grows flask. Okay, I'm going to edit it out so that it's all my science stuff that they see. So you have that huge master list, and then you know, you tailor it to whatever job you want. And they're going to be like, wow, this guy has a lot of organization skills. Wow, this girl has a lot of biological skills. And so it looks like you're really, really trying to fit the mold that they want to fill with you, right? Sometimes people put things on there. I'm just like, I didn't need to know that. I don't really care. So, it's up to you, again, to extrapolate, reading into the description, what you think they would need. And maybe that's a little bit knowing about what the job you're applying for, right? So if it's an internship in, a water systems place, you might want to do a little bit of research of what water systems engineers do. And then you might want to tailor your resume that way. So therefore, me looking at your resume, I don't have to wade through the BS. Anyways, so I think that's all I want to say about that. If you have any other questions, again, I've been on both sides. Yeah, hopefully I can answer them later.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other last minute bits of advice or anything that anyone want to give in before we go to the last question?
I think one last thing I would kind of interject at the end was you shouldn't expect to know anything. Most jobs are really good at on the job training. You're gonna learn. They'd rather have someone that's teachable than knows everything from the get go. I think, especially for entry level beginner positions. Yeah, they'd rather if you can illustrate that yeah, you have those soft skills that show potential, that can be just as good as just flat out knowing it, I believe.
Show you're a quick learner, put it on your resume.
All
I
right.
have another one too.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. For me, I didn't have internships or other things that I put on a resume when I was applying to all these entry-level positions. So what I did was I put course stuff, specifically labs. I think that UC Davis, and I guess all the UCs, at least with respect to maybe community colleges or state college levels, we have access to a lot of high-end equipment, at least on the electrical engineering side. I'm not sure about the other majors, but that's something that I took for granted, and I didn't realize that that's something that a lot of people don't have. We had access to oscilloscopes and 3D printers, laser cutters, all these really, really high-end things that I just took for granted. And so by putting that on my resume, they're like, oh, you've worked with that before? That's crazy, kind of thing. So after I heard that, I started putting more and more stuff, for example, in my 112 class for communications, we built radios, and I just thought that was the norm. But I guess not many labs do that in other colleges. So I would say when applying to jobs, carefully look through all the coursework you've done, specifically the lab work, and see what you think is kind of unique. And if it sounds cool, put it in there.
Hey, you have 3D printer experience. You already have a leg up over me, so.
Okay, last minute call. Is there anything else we want to add in before we go to the last question? All right, cool. I will let Vince introduce the last section. Thank you. This advice is really helpful. I'm definitely in my head, taking notes. So it's really nice to hear about all of this.
All right, once again, thank you, everyone. That was very eye-opening. So our last topic is going to be being specifically in the workforce. So what is your current position or positions you've held in the past, and what is it like being in the workforce and working in a industry environment, and do those workplaces have a diverse set of people?
Okay, I guess we're going on our regular our regular rotation again. So I am a scientist at a biotech company that makes drugs for cancer. I specifically help design the process to generate the antibody that becomes the drug. Maybe I was just a little too trigger happy. I was just and let's see, what can I say about my workplace? So I deal a lot with cells, actually. So those of you that have like a biology background or a cell biology or microbiology also have a leg up over me, because even though I did take a couple of like, BIS or bio 1A, 2A, I didn't take that much of it. So my group is a huge team. It's very hard to work by yourself. You have to work together, and it's really collaborative. So as an engineer, I bring specific skill sets, but also as like biologist and microbiologist and other people in the sciences, protein science type of people, we all come together and we make this process. Does my workplace have a diverse set of people? No, sorry. It's really quite unfortunate, but unfortunately, I think it's just where we live. I work with a lot of Asians. I work with a lot of people who are white or present themselves as white or look white. Unfortunately, it's really not that diverse. I know that our company and the Bay Area and biotech in general is working to be more diverse, and that's something that everybody thinks should happen. I know that in my company, we have a diversity group. So, I mean, companies are starting to work that way, but unfortunately, my company and the other companies I work for haven't been as diverse, I think, as my college experience at Davis. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing, but I'm always glad to see that like companies are making strides to be more diverse.
Let's see. So my current occupation right now is I'm a graduate student and I'm also a teaching assistant. I don't know if anyone here is interested in academia. I don't know if I'm the best to talk about it. I'm just here for a master's. I'm not trying to be a professor or anything, but my favorite occupation that I've had has been out in the field as like a construction manager. For the most part, it's really great. Just being out in the field, seeing kind of the project like come along from like groundbreaking to like the ribbon cutting, it's really nice. But you have your good days and you have your bad days. Sometimes you have to wake up at 4 just to get there at 5, and then the inspector's not there until like 7. So it is what it is. I remember when I first started, I used to be like the scrawny Asian kid that was like on the construction site, and all these other dudes are like old bearded, tatted, like buff dudes, and it's just like they're just staring you down. And like something that I had to learn being in the workforce is like it's a really tough like environment. And unfortunately that kind of leads to like the next question, where it's not really, construction is not as diverse as it could be. It's still very male dominated, but there are like efforts for more women in that field, and I think the women in there are like 10 times as tough as like any guy you can find in the field, because of so much like stuff they have to go through. But yeah, I really like that. It requires a very broad skill set that kind of goes beyond just STEM. You have to do a lot. You have to understand financing and like scheduling and that kind of stuff. So like at the end of the day, these projects have to turn a profit. So you have to have some kind of business sense. You have to follow like local state rules, regulations, whether you're working with like zoning or like environmental policies. So knowing like government and like poli-sci stuff doesn't hurt either. So I really like that. So yeah.
My current occupation is I'm an electrical engineer at Amber Solutions, which is a startup. So I would say that I make my company diverse because I'm the only Asian. Everyone else is white, which is, it's not new to me, but because I was used to Davis for the past 4 years, I was like, oh, now we're back to all white again, which, that's cool, but it is definitely interesting. What's what I think is important in companies is that like everyone has different opinions, right? And so I think it's hard personally for me when people are talking politics at work, which isn't very professional, but at my workplace, that's often talked about because it's a small startup, because there's only like 5 people at the office. Everyone else is very, very comfortable with each other. And then I joined in and I'm like, oh, interesting. But, you know, I think definitely that's not the norm. And maybe if I was in like a higher, not higher company, like a bigger company, there are probably like HR things that I could go to and ask for help and stuff like that. But yeah, it's diversity is an interesting topic in the workforce. But I do like what I do. I like my job and I like going to work. So as long as we're not talking about specific things, I think I jive very well with my coworkers. So yeah.
For me, my current occupation, I recently started at the Department of Water Resources, and my job title is a water resources engineer. But I think it's interesting because I guess the specific branch I'm working at is for hydropower. And so it's managing these hydropower resources for the state water project. And it's like this huge system of like dams, aqueducts, pumping plants and stuff across California. And so it's cool to see it on such kind of like a big picture level. I'm still like deep into training, so don't really like know the specifics yet, but you know, everything that I'm doing, I'm really excited about. I tried to get away from electrical, but I guess I couldn't. I came back. And yeah, in terms of diversity, I think I feel pretty lucky that my workplace has diversity not only in like age, gender, ethnicity, race. It's not, at least my team is not like male dominated. It's pretty half and half. I see a lot of diversity in my coworkers, which is good to see, but also in terms of, I guess, our backgrounds. So I have a civil background, but I work with a lot of electrical engineers. There are mechanical engineers in my team. So I think it's really cool to see that we're doing something so specific, I guess, but we're able to bring a bunch of these different backgrounds.
Currently right now, I am a medical assistant. So that involves a lot of front office and back office work. So what we do basically is we would handle a lot of the patient interaction, which is actually something I didn't know I was going to get very involved in. I was first told, I think when I applied, this was just going to be a front office position. And then once I got later into interview stages, they talked more about how it's more of a medical assistant, a medical assistant position. So we do a lot of patient check-ins, like we would physically room them and then be able to access their patient charts and really talk to these people about like what they're going through and like the different needs that they want to talk to our doctor to. So I really enjoy that. There's a lot of insurance and like other technical aspects that I'm still trying to get like wrap my head around, but they've been doing a really great job at training me and getting used to like the familiarity of like everything that we have to do. Since we're pretty much the forerunners of the clinic, doc is just there to see the patients, and like we're the ones like answering the phones or prescribing or like sending out the medicine refills or faxing, all that fun stuff, you know. But what I really like is the fact that we get to room these patients and talk to them and hear them out. And then if my workplace has a set of diverse people, it depends on how you see it, because everyone there is a person of color, but we're like 90% Filipino because our doctor is Filipino, so has identified as a Filipina. So that's kind of just the city that I live in. I live in Vallejo, and if y'all know, we're a pretty diverse city, but we're very Filipino. So And then all of our healthcare workers are female identifying. So that's also like another like wishy-washy topic, because it's not to say that like healthcare is like very feminine leaning, but like that's what people believe. So that's like kind of something I wish that we had more of, like other genders or other expressions. And we're also all like college or post or like recently graduated age, other than the doctor. So we all can like relate, and like we kind of help each other with like, oh, like you're looking into post-bacs there, or you're trying to do different courses, or we all have different like ideas of what we want to do in the future. Like some are pre-PA, some are pre-med, some are pre-public health. So we all get to like talk about that. So that's what I really enjoy too. It's not all like everyone wants to be a doctor.
I also just want to quickly add that it might seem really shocking to you guys to know that it's not diverse outside of Davis, but know that UC Davis and even the PHILAM is a bubble, is a liberal, safe space. And it's kind of tough when you get out of that safe space where everybody maybe is politically correct and everybody shares ideas so freely without judging people, and then all of a sudden getting into the real world and then meeting people that are not afraid to say what they think and they don't care what you think, or also being in a place where it is not predominantly Asian or Filipino. I grew up in a place that was very Filipino, very, very Filipino. It's not Vallejo. But I did live in Vallejo for a little bit of my life though. And then I came to Davis, and even that was a step to me. And then I got out of Davis, and then, you know, I've just been going from like raised around the same 50 group of Filipinos to like slowly, you know, people that it's hard to see people that look like me. So I just want to say that happens, but you know, you don't have to be complacent about it. It's up to you guys as like the newer generation to like really promote diversity and inclusivity. So it's not something that you have to live with, but know that it's out there.
Yeah, and then also oftentimes when you are at work, I mean, you can kind of see it when you're like at school versus when you're at home, and you code switch as well with different communities. So you have to have a different tone. Like, for example, if I'm teaching my course, I'm going to be talking like this, and I'm going to be like articulating a lot more. But if I'm back at home, like in Oakland, like if I'm going to talk like that, like it's just, I'm a lot more handsy, and like, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but like, so like it'd be like that sometimes, but like, you have to be able to know kind of this environment you're at and kind of sometimes play ball, you know? You know what I mean?
I'm not from Stockton either. I'll just let you guys guess.
All right, were there any other last minute things that we wanted to throw in here before we move to questions? Okay, we can move on. So again, if anyone in the audience has any questions for any of our panelists, feel free to like type it in the chat. You can unmute yourself. We'll leave a couple minutes just to see if anyone's wondering anything. Actually, I was wondering, I do actually have a question. I believe Akira is the one who mentioned like 3D printing in Davis. Are there like classes for that? Or did you just learn by yourself? Because I honestly kind of want to learn how to do that. It just seems interesting. I don't know how to do it.
So I don't know of any classes for that specifically. I feel like that's too specific of a thing for a whole class to be centered around. But I do know that in Boehner, there is a 3D, what is it called?
It's the SBC. It's actually being redeveloped right now. It's the Student Engineering Design Center,
Yeah.
SDSC. So it's not open right now. It will be open next year, and luckily when the campus is open again, but it's going to be even more 3D printers, more high-tech equipment, more space.
And I think you can ask for like help from the people that work there. Is that correct or no?
Yes, but you have to get them at certain times because like they're also like college employees, so they have to do projects for like research. Like professors will like have projects that they need them to machine on, so they're super helpful, but some hours are better than others. I think there's I'm not sure if there's a fee. I think it's covered with your fee, right? But like I know that there's some training that might cost, like sometimes the training costs a bit, but if you join certain clubs, you can get that fee waived. I know because I'm the grad advisor for like the Steel Bridge team on Davis, where they make the steel bridge, and they have to 3D not 3D print, but they have to use a laser cutter, which is in the same center, and then they require like additional training and that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, EME 50, exactly. Yeah, that's a class that's also part of the training. If you take the class, training's free.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, when we go back to campus, I'm definitely going to note that. And I believe Anthony asked a question in the chat, so I'll read it out. Anyone feel free to answer. What tips or suggestions would any of you have for those having difficulty looking for a job / internship opportunities due to COVID?
Ooh, I have one. So personally, the whole time that I was looking for a job, it felt pretty hopeless because I kept getting rejection after rejection. And so the only thing that, at least for me, the only thing I could do is keep on applying. But in the meantime, something to boost your resume would be a side project. Personally, I had a lot of old electronic stuff that my friends and family, just wanted to throw away. And so, for example, there was an old microwave that my my friend was gonna throw away, and I was like, "Yo, can I keep that? Because there's a transformer in there." And so I was able to take that apart and build up a little thing with that, and then I just threw that on my resume, and like they started asking about it. And so, it's being able to show that you're passionate about your, I guess, intended career field is something, from my experience, that a lot of employers look for, because it shows that they're not just doing it for the money; they're doing it because they like to do it, and that puts them at a level above everyone else. So I would say, like, if there's anything that you can think of that you can do on the side, try doing that.
Just to kind of bounce off that, I kind of say this half-heartedly, kind of joking, but Matt actually took the advice seriously. If it's because of COVID and you want to wait out a period, maybe grad school might be an option. If it's only for a year or two, it's a way for you to gain skills. In a way, it is maybe it's a very resource intensive side project, but grad school is always there.
Okay, so I think we have a couple more questions in the chat. I'll read off one of them. How important are grades or GPA after graduation?
I can tell.
Somewhat. I'll be honest. Somewhat. I think when I've looked at resumes, honestly, and this is just me, I know other people do, but I don't look at GPA. I look at the skills that you have. If you know MATLAB, right? Or if you knew some kind of coding, I'm going to look at those and I'm going to be like, okay, this person's got those skills, but I'm also going to test you on it. So if you say you have a skill, if you know MATLAB, if you know how to make buffers, I'm going to ask you a question. So you don't need to have like a 4.0 GPA, but you need to know your stuff.
Right. And something else too is when I was applying and when I was doing interviews, they always asked if I had experience doing X, Y, and Z. I never asked about my grades or, if I learned something in school, like I had to be able to explain it to them. So definitely, I don't think it's important in my case. And, when they asked, for like a verification of like my education or whatever, they're like, you can send your transcripts or a copy of your diploma. And I was like, I don't want them to see my grades, so I'm just going to send them my diploma.
Regarding, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just regarding grades or anything, not a lot of the jobs that I applied for specifically have like asked for grades or like looked into that. So like, it's really like, your skills and like your soft skills and like what you like show yourself as. Like Nirel said earlier, like it's being confident in what you do know and then being confident in what you don't know, because then they really like to see that side of you. I don't think they really or like the jobs that I applied to like never were really number heavy. They were all like skill heavy. during the application process. So as long as they see like you had a degree from Davis, that's like already a good sign, you know?
Yeah, I think in my experience, like I think it's not too GPA focused. I think anything that's like a 3 and up kind of gets blurred together. You know, they kind of want to know that at least like there's some foundation of like this person's like a hard worker, you know, like so, I mean, like you wouldn't publicize like you're getting all Fs or whatever, right? But like if you have a good grade, show it. If you don't, then it like you can lean on other things like your soft skills or like your like if you're really talented in like one particular technique or skill. So yeah, but there's nothing wrong with like studying hard in school and getting a good grade too. So it's not like it's totally not unimportant. You should still try your best in school. You shouldn't come to lab like really late and like just give your TA excuses, right, Matthew? Okay. Leanne, who is your favorite TA?
It's you, I guess.
Okay, I'll just move on to the next question. So Jeffrey had a bit more fun question for Narelle. So when you're recruiting people for your company across many campuses, if they were involved in PhilAm in some way, does that create like a low-key bias to give them interview offers?
Yes. I'm not gonna lie. I think a little bit of job searching, actually, I think a huge part of job searching, although, okay, well, I'll talk about it and then I'll say all my little caveats after it. A huge part of job searching are the connections that you have, the network that you have. So when you're in college, what you should do is just like get this huge, humongous network, grow your LinkedIn connections. And if you have a connection with me, like if I'm looking you up as an intern, if you have a connection with me, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, I kind of know this person for like second connections or something like that. And then I also might ask my connection about you. But the fact that there is some kind of connection there does give you some kind of bias to get interviewed or at least get your resume to the top of the stack. So yeah, it does kind of create a bias. So again, I'm just like, I have personally gone through the PhilAm in multiple orgs, in multiple positions at one time. And I know what that does to a person. And I know that if this person did it successfully and they came out relatively unscathed, then there must be some kind of resilience there. I will say that the hardest thing to do is to get your first job. I think after like getting my first job was super hard, super hard. But then all the networks and everybody I met in that one company, because biotech is so small, I was able to much more easily get jobs afterwards.
I also want to say like the connections that you make don't have to necessarily be direct. This is like a little TMI, but then for the job that I have right now, the person who interviewed me, one of the longtime workers there, she was a transfer student at Davis and she saw that I went to Davis on my resume. And then she was like, oh, interesting. And then the doctor that we work under also went to Davis back in the back all the way back those years. And then that was also like, she took an interest in the fact that I went to Davis and we talked about it. So there's connections everywhere. You just like, it just a matter of fact of like finding them, you know?
Ooh, I kind of want to bounce off of that as well. So my first job at Sense Tech in the Bay Area, I also kind of got it through a connection-ish. Someone who I met at a party, but it wasn't like, it was a PASE event, but then there was like a party afterwards. Anyways, I digress. She wasn't even part of PASE. She was part of a different org, but like Lauren was the president at the time, and Lauren's whole house were presidents of different orgs. So like all the presidents just threw like a really big internal like get together. And so I met someone from a different org, and that person ended up being like my connection into this job. So you really never know. You really never know like when a connection is gonna come in handy. And so because of that, I would really stress getting to know not only like people in the PhilAm, but also I think it's really helpful to get to know everyone in your major. You know, of course, the different majors have different sizes, of course, but to me, the reason why I was able to pass all my classes was because I can lean on my friends to be able to study together and stuff. Oh shoot. Yeah.
All right, here's also the T. Biotech is a small place. Engineering is a small major. Science is a very small major. So in college, we had a group project, and I was working with this dude, and he just sucked. I was there from like 5 a.m. to like 10 p.m. trying to code our project and write our lab report. And he was there for like 2 hours, went to lunch, came back for 2 hours. Guess what? So fast forward maybe 5 years after that, one of my friends in the engineering major, she got the resume of this guy that I had worked with in this group project. And she was like, hey, what did you think about this guy? I was like, do you think he got interviewed? Probably not. Just saying, guys, connections, as superficial as it is, connections are really, really important. And also to say that, go further, it also makes a big deal what kind of impression you make on other people. So, you know, if you're treating your lab mates pretty horribly, they could be in a position to interview you or not, or even worse, hire you or not.
Yeah, I had a very similar story with that. So I had one of my P bros was hiring, and then he was interviewing this candidate who was my classmate. And I remember she got sent to SJA because she was cheating off of like one of my close friends in that class. And I passed that along to the guy that I was hiring. And I mean, it's a very similar story. So yeah, you want to make a good first impression. You want to have a good image for the most part. Oftentimes I was hired kind of just by like off of references alone. Sometimes it's easier in like private sector. I think with government jobs, there's a lot more like red tape, a lot more holes you have to jump through. But with private sector, they have a lot more discretion who they hire. And like if you just kind of make a name for yourself and you kind of like understand the market that you're in, understand like your niche or what role you want to play, like they'll pick up like free agents like right off the bat. Almost kind of like when I think of like how like the NBA market is kind of sometimes when you have like these all-star like players and stuff like that. With construction is very similar. Like you have a select elite group and like they'll just get picked up by name recognition alone sometimes. So that's how a lot of the bigger private sector firms work. But yeah, just don't. I don't know if this is recorded. That's why I told Vince I wasn't like comfortable with it because I swear a lot, but just don't be a dick. Like at the end of the day, just yeah.
I have something to bounce off of that before. Basically, I think that, how do I say this? What I was trying to say last time was, right now, I'm at a position where my boss is asking me for references, and he's like, hey, we want to hire someone just like you, you know, like we're a growing company, we want to get another entry-level position person. Like, who do you think would be good? You know, like give me some resumes. And so like that alone kind of tells you that how important connections are, because your friends can be your way in. And like, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense too. You have, like, from an employer standpoint, you have so many resumes that's in front of you, and they all, like, you know, they look really good, but how do you actually know who is right for the job? And it's so much more, at least from my understanding, it's a lot easier to have confidence in a candidate if someone who you know can vouch for them, you know? So to me, it makes sense why connections are so important, and that's why I would really, really stress getting to know the people, specifically for me in your major. I think that would really help, but yeah, generally speaking, I guess any kind of connection is great.
All right, we have another question here from the chat. Would y'all recommend focusing on industry internships or research during undergrad?
do want to go to grad school. I mean, personally,
That would be my
per-
question too.
yeah. Personally, I much prefer industry. That's just my bias, and I don't know if I'm the only panelist that has grad school experience, but that's kind of weird that I'm saying it. But like for me, I was never much of an academic. I did multiple like undergrad research opportunities and stuff like that, but I felt like you just meet more people in like industry internships, because like if you're doing undergrad research, you're seeing these professors, you're seeing like these like people in the university. If you're going out there to a new company and you meet new people, like I think then there's more opportunity to expand your network, expand your bubble, and you kind of you can learn things that you would outside of the classroom, in my opinion. Sometimes, like with undergrad research, they're very good at like bouncing off of what you learn from the classroom. Like for example, like I did a geotechnical undergrad research, right? And the person that hired me was my professor of that class. So of course I was going to use principles that he taught me, but I was never in a position where I had to like really go outside of my realm of comfort, I guess. So that's kind of my take on it.
That's so funny, Henry. I was going to ask the same exact question. If you want to go to grad school, so internships provide you with the skills that you will need to set you up for what you want to do after college. So going off of what Henry asked, if you wanted to go to grad school, if you wanted to do more research or be like in a think tank or something like that, something very researchy, then I would say do the research with a professor. If you want to go into industry, then you should try to get an industry internship, because not only is it going to teach you how to research, but it's also going to teach you kind of the business side of the industry that not necessarily your undergrad research will teach you. Not to say that you can't learn that when you do get there, but that internship in industry will set you up better for being in industry. And then the grad or the research will set you up better for being in research.
Also, just to add on, just from my empirical like data, like industry pays better. Just saying. You got to pay the bill somehow.
Okay, so we have some more questions coming up on the chat. We'll start with the first one. In small industries where folks talk, do you worry about moving to other companies?
As long as you are a good worker, as long as you are a good person, you shouldn't be scared. If you're a butt, you should be so scared. Like I said, right? The guy was my senior design group mate, but 5 years later, he was possibly missing out on a job. So again, just be a nice person and karma won't bite you in the butt.
Okay, we have some more questions. What difference is there working in a large company versus working in a smaller startup company?
I guess I can go. Sorry, Henry. Thanks. So for me, I've only worked at startups, but it's only been, a few months. And I think the biggest difference, one of the big differences is a 401k. So what that is a retirement savings plan, which is matched by your employer.
Go Roth.
I don't have one yet. And so because I work at a small startup, yeah, you're missing out on a lot of savings potentially. That's one thing that is very important to know. And I also think that you should start saving for retirement as soon as you get a job, but that's just my personal opinion. Another thing that is very different between a startup and a large company is the rate at which things progress. For example, in my startup, what we do is we're kind of working on the electrical infrastructure of housings. So we're trying to improve on circuit breakers because right now, it's still an electromechanical switch, whereas with I don't want to get too deep into it, but basically we're working on electrical infrastructure. And so I look at the circuit, I'm like, oh, I think I can make an improvement on the efficiency of this. So I would suggest something to my boss and be like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, let's try that. And then he would buy the component and we'd test it the next day, and if it works, then my idea gets put into the product. And it's kind of crazy to me how quickly that can happen. Whereas I know a lot of my coworkers before, they're all like old white guys, which is not a bad thing, but it's pretty cool. They have experience in big companies, and they were talking to me about how if they ever saw something like that, it would take like weeks and weeks for any kind of, because it has to go through so much management, the project manager has to approve it, and then like the head person has to approve it, and it just takes so much longer. So I think that if you're looking for a fast-paced environment, if you're looking for something where you can make a direct impact on something, startups are the way to go. They're also, in my opinion, a lot more friendly in terms of being late. At least I come in, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and my boss like does not care. But I know that some of my friends who work at bigger companies, like they get like very strict schedules and stuff like that. So I think it's just the environment is definitely different.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think also with like when you're working in a smaller to mid-range company, you're more likely to have like a variety of tasks. You'll get to wear multiple hats. Usually in a bigger firm or like in a government agency, they specialize. You do one thing and you do one thing for your entire career. You get very good at it, but it can get mundane if you kind of want to do the same thing over and over again. So when I was working in like a larger firm, I just felt like a cog in the machine. Whereas like in a smaller firm, yeah, you have more agency. You can see more of a direct impact, like Akira said, in your in the work that you do.
I also want to say that working for the state, everything moves so slow. Like Akira said, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. There's a lot of management. I remember going to one meeting and there were so many stakeholders, especially for such a big project that spanned like California. And so with so many stakeholders, they had to go through like a voting process and meet quorum just to make small decisions.
All right, thank you. We have another question here for Narelle. What makes an applicant really stand out in an interview? Like, how heavily do you weigh their responses to hypotheticals versus their personality or their skills, etc.?
Yeah, really good question. I think for me, what makes somebody really stand out is somebody that, first of all, seems confident to some sort of degree. You don't have to be like, yeah, I'm amazing, but like, I can tell when you're super scared and you're super like, ah. So I think that's one thing. So just when you come in and like say hi, hello to me. Another thing that really stands out to me is, again, knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know. So it's a little bit of confidence there. I also do think to myself, could I work with this person the whole entire time during this interview? Like just the way they're talking to me, the way they're acting, the way they're answering questions, responding to me. Could I work with this person? And I mean, I like to think I usually get along well with most people. So most people check off that box. One thing that I do, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. It is kind of scary to be interviewed by me because I like to ask a couple of technical questions, and it really depends on, like, I look at the skills that you have and I'm like, okay, if they have these certain skills or they've passed these certain things, they've taken these classes, they should have these skills. So of course, if it's an internship, then I won't really ask you so many questions, like super technical questions, maybe super basic stuff like, what is pH or something like that. Super basic, right? But if you're like a PhD, I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. And for me, more insider secret, what I like to do is I like to kind of ask technical questions, start to push a little bit more and kind of see where their limit is, because you can put like this, you can put this facade up of like, when you're BSing and stuff like that. But when you see a real true person's nature or their personality is when you push them to the edge. So I might ask you, like, what is pH? Okay, well, how's the pH probe work? Okay, what happens if the pH goes up by 1 unit? Okay, blah, 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 blah. You know, we'll start to go down that path, and I'll really just go off of what you're saying. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but definitely a big thing is just like, how confident are they? And could I work with this person? Does this person seem like a good person to fit our team? Because remember, what I do is very team oriented. Yes, it's scary. Yes, do as many mock interviews as you can. That's actually a really good way to like kind of stress test yourself. And if you guys feel comfortable, I would say do mock interviews with like maybe professors that you are close to, or people older that are in the industry or something like that, just to stress test yourself. Because if you can do that, you'll ace an interview.
Adding on to that, I guess be careful what you put in your resume. If you don't really have, okay, a specific example for me, I was interviewing with Oracle, and on their final interview, right, I was matched with this one person, and on the she I guess her whole career was very like coding heavy, and for me, I took like one class in ECS 30, which was I think C, and so I put that as one of my skills. And she's like, oh, I see you have C on here, like tell me this, this, and this, and I was like, yo, I don't know any of that. So she kind of called me out on that. She's like, okay, like, I think you're a great applicant. However, in the future, what I'd recommend, when I asked her, like, what can I do to improve in the last question thing, she was like, I think you're a good applicant. However, what I'm worried about is like, you know, you're not proficient in C. I don't think that you should have put that in your resume. So she kind of like grilled me on that. And I took there's a lot to take from that in terms of like improving. So all this to say, I think that, yeah, just be careful what you put in your resume.
And also remember, the people who are interviewing you are like usually either your peers or your superiors. So it's hard to BS them because they know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, also, I just wanted to throw out, like, for any EEs out there, if y'all want to talk to me specifically about what kind of coursework and what kind of like teachers, whatever, yeah, feel free to hit me up, add me on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever.
Oh yeah, if we're doing that, if there's any civil engineers out there, feel free to talk to Leanne.
Yes, you can talk to me.
Don't
I
bother
was
with
gonna
me
say
though.
that anyway.
He's definitely the better civil engineer between the two of us.
Okay, other than that, were there any final questions that anyone had or anything before we wrap things up?
Ooh, I have a question. As someone who's just entered the workforce, right? Something that I'm wondering about is like, how long do you stick with a company for? How long would you say is it time to like start looking into other places and stuff like that? I'm not really sure when to just like stop the job search, or if I should just continue looking for higher positions or whatever. So yeah.
I don't know if Narelle can take it, but in my experience, are you tied down right now?
No.
Okay, so if you ain't got no baby mama, you ain't got no kids, like you can still like bounce around and it's still pretty like doable. But like when you have responsibilities, that's kind of where it gets harder. So usually in my experience, the professionals that really understand like the natural evolution of it, kind of they learn as much as they can in the smaller to mid-range firms, so they can wear a lot of hats, learn a lot of skills at a quick, fast pace, and then they'll, once they're like middle age, they'll settle on like a more larger or a government agency where the pace is a little slower, the pay is a lot more stable, and then they'll just kind of eventually build up that retirement and then retire. And then the really smart ones that are like super like workaholics, they don't actually retire. They retire from their main firm, but then they just do like consulting on the side, and they'll just cash in 2 paychecks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh, I know people like that. I would say a couple of things is when you feel like you've almost learned everything you wanted to learn, or if you feel like you're just like not really growing anymore, it feels a little stagnant to you, then maybe you should look for another job. Another one is if like you hate your job and you see no light at the end of the tunnel, you should probably look for another job. And then also what Henry's saying, yeah, like it's much easier to do that when you're much younger. But when you do get older, when you start to have kids or a family, you might have to think about like benefits. But you know, what is the better situation for you? I guess
Yeah.
that's what you're always thinking about is like, what's the better situation for me in whatever season of life I'm in?
Right. Wow. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, were there any other questions before we wrap this section up? Last minute call.
Actually, it's kind of an interesting one, but I guess so to people that do like recruiting and stuff, would you say that your best advice for like anyone that's interviewing in general should like look at interviews as like not as tests per se, but like genuine interest towards a company and like sort of like a conversation, but it's still technically a test, but it's low key hidden as a test, if you know what I mean.
I think that's exactly what people should go into interviews feeling like with that mindset is that like it's not a test. We're not trying to fail you. We're not trying to like give you a big fat F and lower your GPA to 0. We're like here to get to know you. It's more like speed dating, like 1 hour speed dating. And then, you know, it seems a little bit lighter. And like when you don't put so much heaviness on it or like do or die on it, then you feel lighter and you look more confident, you act more confident. So I think it helps you to like not think like, oh my gosh, if I don't get this job, I'm going to like be a failure in life. No, don't look at it that way. Keep it lighthearted. You're interviewing, I think one of the other panelists said like you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And like think of it as, yeah, thank you, Akira. It's a conversation. It's a conversation between two people of the same field.
I see.
Okay, I think if there are no further questions, I just realized it's almost 8, so we can probably, I didn't realize the questions were going on for that long, but there's a lot of helpful info. So I think we can start to wrap it up here. Thank you so much, panelists, for your information, your experiences. We really appreciate that. So we're just gonna go really quick to community announcements. The first thing is there is a career fair happening next week, so you guys can take some of that info that we learned today, apply it here. The career fair is available on Handshake, so just look it up there. It's next Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So just be aware of that. Use some of this information. I know I'm gonna like note it in my head. So our next announcement, I believe we have someone from our Pa'ano team here. If you guys would like to describe what Pa'ano is and break it down, if not, I can. But if anyone else from board wants to discuss Pa'ano, feel free to. Okay, I can do it then. That's fine. So Pa'ano is the Filipinx Americans Aiding in Network Opportunities. It's hosted by PASE. We're looking basically both for mentors and mentees, and our goal is to pair you guys up. So we have mentors who will help like undergraduate students, like, you know, connections, what we've been emphasizing here, you know, to look for opportunities in the future. It's just really great to get to know more people as well. It's a really great thing that we do. I look forward to it every year. So both our panelists, you guys are welcome to apply as mentors. We'd love to have you guys in the program. Anyone else here, you guys are allowed to apply as a mentor or mentee. And if you guys have questions about the program, feel free to direct them at us. And the information to apply is right here. The application link is here. It's also on our Instagram. The deadline is tomorrow night. But yeah, if you have any questions about it, let us know. Revealing is Friday, February 3rd. And I think, are there any other community announcements? Does anyone in the audience have anything to promote really quick before we like wrap things up?
I have a quick question about Paano. Are the mentors like alumni or like people in industry, or are they just upperclassmen? Who are they?
I believe, if anyone else on board wants to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's upperclassmen and alumni.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so if that was it, then we are done. So thank you everyone for coming. A special thank you to all of our panelists. I really enjoyed hearing all this information. It was very helpful. And if you guys want to check out PACE, let us know. Yeah, that's it. If you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to ask us, but if not, thank you for coming.
Also, I'm from Northeast LA, also known as Eagle Rock. if anybody wanted to know.
Thank you. But other than that, I guess, thank you for coming, guys. It was really nice hanging out with you guys all night. And yeah, again, special thank you to the panelists.
And I can stick around for a little bit too, if anybody wants to ask like one-on-one questions.
Ooh, get the full interview.
Thanks everyone for coming out. Also, don't know if Akira and Kat saw this, but your little Christine says hi. Just want to make sure wasn't able to make it. She's sad, but
Thanks, Matt.
Oh yeah, hey, it's me, Christine. Just want to shout out my bigs. I love you both.
Hello. Fun fact, Christine asked me to come and then she didn't even show up for the first half. So just saying.
Same. She texted me today saying I wouldn't be there. Just saying.
I do want to just give a general tip, by the way. My first job at SenseTech was very malicious. I don't know how to say it. Basically, like they scammed the crap out of all of us. We were getting paid like maybe less. I'm not sure if it was less or like just barely above minimum wage, which is super like not okay, right? Especially with an engineering degree. But there are people out there that are looking, that know that new grads are desperate for a foot in the door, right? So just be aware of that, because I was not. And I was just taking any kind of offer that I can get, right? So this person also like just wrote checks and just gave it to me as payment. And that is not taxed on their end. But like as of a week ago, I got sent a form from them about taxes and stuff. So it just gets really complicated. So basically just be careful of your offers and just make sure it sounds legit, because people out there, yeah. Oh, and I guess to answer Jessica's question about PG&E as a company, I'm not sure. I know I have a friend that works there currently, but as far as like how they are as a company, how they treat their employees, I'm not really sure. But I can ask my friend who works there, and I can definitely get back to you if you ever want to like have like a one-on-one kind of thing. Yeah.
People be trying to get the tea, huh?
I know, that's what I'm saying.
That's funny.
I have a question. I guess it's for everyone, but I guess more specifically towards Nirel, just because I'm looking to enter the biotech industry sometime in the future. But I was just wondering, like in y'all's experience, was like financial stability ever like a concern for y'all? Because like for me, it's like, you know, I like people in college, people are like, oh yeah, just do what you want, you know, like you'll be fine. but then like coming home on the weekends and like your parents are like, okay, so like, what are you doing? You know? So it's like, for me, financial is something that like I try not to think about, but I kind of have to. And so for you, Nirel, was that like entering like right after undergrad and finding positions, was financial stability like a hard thing for you, if you don't mind talking about that?
Yeah, so now that you guys know, I'm actually from LA and I currently live in San Francisco. After when I moved to college, essentially that was the last time I ever lived at home. So everything else I kind of had to pay for. Also, that being said, I don't live a frivolous lifestyle. I mean, I buy a nice pair of shoes, a nice bag once in a while, but like I'm not a frivolous person. And for me, I felt like right out of college, it was enough for me. It was enough. I'll say that at the company I worked at, at first I lived with one of my friends who had an extra room for a little while, but I was able to save up and I actually moved to San Francisco at like maybe 2 years into that new job. So, I mean, San Francisco is not really the cheapest place to live. So I do think that it is doable as long as you're not, you know, eating out at like Gary Danko or anything like that crazy all the time. I think it's doable. Yeah, because in biotech specifically, they do really value the knowledge that you have very heavily. I mean, for me, knowing about biology and microbiology and stuff like that, that's like a very specific skill set that they would value from you. So it hasn't been an issue for me. Good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to take this opportunity because I rarely ever get to meet other biochemical engineering majors. Like,
are you a biochemical engineer major?
Yes. There's only like 3 other people I'm pretty sure in my graduating year that are also biochemical engineering majors.
Yeah.
Well, what I was always concerned about with my major is that there's no like specific job title, like no specific field for biochemical engineers. And typically, like in my experience, chemical engineers kind of think that biochemies are like, it's not worth it. You take 3 courses of bio. Who are you? Who do you think you are? So like, how did you like fit the mold into biotech coming out of Davis as a biochemical engineering major?
Yeah. What year are you?
I'm a sophomore.
Okay. You might get a professor named Professor David Block. He's the guy that was like president or something like that of like the viticulture department, and his class is great. Love that guy. Let me see. It's really interesting because I think when I was in Davis, the huge emphasis for biochemical engineers was that we were going to go into biotech. Like that's where you're going. You're a biochemical engineer. You're going to grow cells. You're going to make product from it, right? Whereas that's not really the case, quite honestly. I think that a couple of other places that, or a couple of other industries that I know of are like bioag, especially because you're in Davis. I actually interned for a bioagricultural company in Davis called Marone Bio Innovations, and we made pesticides from product that we harvested from fermentation. So that's the way to go. You can also, I knew one of my classmates actually interned at like a cheese place. A couple of people have done like beer stuff. Like you are in prime position to make your own brewery if you wanted to do that. And that was like the kind of running joke with me and like all the biochemistry friends were like, if we don't get jobs, we're all just gonna make a brewery and we're gonna work for each other. So I think you're in a really great situation because anything that has to do with growing cells, that's like the biggest part of being a biochemist. Anything that has to do with growing cells and then harvesting whatever the cells are growing, you could fit into. So that means you could be truly an engineer and you can work on like the equipment to grow cells, the tanks, the bioreactors. You can work on making the controllers for the bioreactors. Like that's even like almost going into like electrical engineering, but with a biology emphasis. You could also work in like a cell protein sciences type of thing because you do have the biology background. So like know that being a biochemical engineer means you're like a biologist, you're a little bit of a chemist, you're an engineer, kind of all mashed into one. So I think you got lots of options out there, but maybe that's just me. But awesome, yay, it's nice to meet another biochemie. I think there were like 10 people in our graduating class. We were split right down the middle. There were 5 guys and 5 girls. So that was really different for us as a major because, you know, mechanical engineering, I think that's like 90% guys. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? This is so fun. Any other questions about like PhilAm life when I was around? Oh, fun fact. Fun fact. So you know how our tagline or whatever is join PACE, hashtag join PACE? My co-president came up with that.
No way! That was y'all? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he
Dang.
notoriously during, you know, all the guys always do like the bahag dance or whatever. Notoriously, he was in the fighting scene, and he at the end you could hear him when he won. He was like, "Join PACE." So I think that was like PCN 2012, maybe.
Dang, I miss PCN.
Yeah, John Espanola. He's the guy with the dreadlocks. Can't miss him. He was crazy because he was like a double major, double minor. I think it was like, oh, he was a mech arrow, which is a double major, right? And then he minored in writing and Asian American studies.
Wow.
I can't remember. But anyway, I was like, that doesn't count. Mech arrow is one major. He's like, no, it's not, it's 2. So fun PhilAm times. Yeah, it might be on YouTube or something like that. There you go. Bye.
I have to go too, but it was really nice talking to everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye, Kara.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone can feel free to leave now. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good unless there were like any tiny questions. Everyone's free to leave. But it was nice having you guys.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Thank y'all so much. We really
Thank you.
appreciate all the help that y'all have given us.